Thanks everybody. As you can see, we're making all kinds of adjustments for the moment in time. I'm sorry. Thank you all for everyone who showed up at 7:30 on Zoom. I realized there were some older materials, as it said, 8 o'clock, but we've been trying to do events within about an hour or so. So, anyways, I get to start off with a true story. So my uncle is on vacation in Hawaii, and he's on one of the islands and just hiking up on. He gets to the top. He's on like the rim of a volcano, like right, one of the great things you would do when you're visiting Hawaii. And he's not alone. There's some other people there, and just starts chatting up this guy that's with him. He's like, oh, my uncle's from Boston. He's like, oh, so where are you from? And he's like, oh, I'm from Iowa. And my uncle says, who knows one person in Iowa? Me, like the only one. So, but of course, he goes to play the name game. He says, oh, do you know Jim O'Loughlin? And the guy's like, he teaches at University of Northern Iowa. And hey, the guy says, yeah, wait a second, I think I do know him. And it was Roger. He's on the rim of a volcano in Hawaii and runs into my uncle. So there should be some great moral to the story, but otherwise, of course, my uncle's like texting me right away, like, you won't believe what happened. So anyways, we are not on the rim of a volcano tonight, but we are all here, and I'd like to thank you, whether you're live or in person, for coming out tonight to hear from the writing duo, Dave Hoing and Roger Hileman. Did I get it right that time? Okay.
Good, thanks.
Who have both done, work individually on their own, and then have developed this partnership where they've really prolifically produced a number of novels that they've co-written together. And we'll probably get to hear about some of the ways in which that's all come about. The latest one, though, is called In the Blood, published by Penmore Press, and it's set in the 1940s jazz scene in a kind of lightly fictionalized Waterloo, Iowa. And then tonight there'll also be a musical performance that I think they're gonna argue is kind of like tied in with the themes of the book. We'll see how that all works out. So we'll have some special guests coming later on. There will be some time at the end for some questions. If you are on Zoom and you have questions and want to put those in the chat, I can make sure that they get answered. So with that, I will say thank you to Dave and to Roger for coming out tonight. Thank you for all of you that are here. So here we go.
I'll start. I'll first. Hi, I'm Dave. He's Roger. Just in case you need to know. So anyway, I guess I'll start because we thought chapter 1 would be a good way to do that. So let me just go ahead and dive in. Is that picking me up okay?
You a little closer?
Yeah, sure. Think that might work okay? Okay, let's do it. Casey Brown waited in the wings and practiced the fingerings for Coco on her alto sax. Her clothes and underwear stuck to her like cellophane. Naturally, the night of her audition would be the hottest one of the summer, but that was okay. Jazz was supposed to be played hot. The club, the New Orleans, or Narlings as everyone called it, had been built before the turn of the century as a vaudeville house. The tiny auditorium smelled like reefer smoke. Drums, an upright piano, and a stand-up bass had been placed on the stage, although no one was at them. It was Sunday, and the club was closed. Only 2 people had come to try out so far, but it was early. Jazz musicians showed up when they showed up. A single light bulb dangled above the stage as the other hopeful, a Negro teenager, was attempting what might once have been Bird Gets the Worm. He put his soul into it, his jerking like a spider on a skillet, but the number's lightning tempo was way beyond his abilities. Who would choose such a difficult number for an audition? Casey told herself she wasn't nervous as she sucked on a reed and twisted the mouthpiece back and forth to produce just the right angle for her embouchure. Her life didn't depend on this gig. Nothing depended on it. She had a job, a fiance, and an apartment of her own. Most girls would be happy with that. And she was, but nothing fulfilled her like music. Closing her eyes, she calmed herself, as she usually did, by imagining her brother Kenny's voice. Kenny had died in the war. You can do it, Squirt, he said. She peeked out from behind the curtain at the judges. In the periphery of the light, two colored men in black suits sat on the same side of a small table across the dance floor. The fat one on the right sported wireframe glasses, a Cab Calloway mustache, and slicked down hair. An intimidating scowl indicated he was unimpressed. The second man appeared equally underwhelmed and equally intimidating. Still, Casey knew that it was the fat one she'd have to win over. White or black, all bosses had that same "I own you" look. The teenager finished playing. He gazed at the two men. The two men glared back. "You ain't gonna say nothing?" the boy asked. Apparently they weren't. A few awkward moments of silence later, he slouched off the stage, brushing Casey as he passed. If he noticed she was white, he didn't react. He was so distraught he probably didn't notice her at all. Sucking in a breath of courage, she stepped out from behind the curtain, holding her instrument like a cross to ward off evil. The men were whispering between themselves and shaking their heads. They ignored her. Casey cleared her throat. Boss man looked up. "Oh, hell no," he said. "Prom's over on the west side, Shirley Temple. Go get on back there and maybe they'll let you march in the halftime show come fall." She could sense other people in the gloom at the back of the room, probably the musicians in the band, the ones she hoped to be playing alongside after tonight. "I'm 22, she said. "My ass. This looked like the country club to you?" Even in the murky light, it was obvious there was something wrong with the second man's fingers, some kind of deformity. "Paper said you were looking for an alto sax player," Casey said. "Yeah, well, I don't see one up there," boss man said. "Didn't say they couldn't be white or a girl. I'm saying so now. Even if you're good, which you're not, why should we hire a white girl who probably learned her shit from a better black player when we could hire the better black player? My brother Kenny taught me. He was Charlie Parker Good." He and Badfingers exchanged a look of amusement. "So what I'm hearing is you're not even the best in your family. Should have been him I'm telling no to. He too scared to come?" "Can't. North Africa, 43. He paused like he was going to offer the same old cliched words of condolence everyone else did, but instead he said, "My people cleaned toilets in the war." "So what kind of reed you got? Like you'd know the difference." "Rico." "So you gonna let me try out or what? Me and that boy are the only ones here." "Plenty of horns in this town. Can they take the changes from Coco?" Boss man laughed. It sounded like a sputtering engine. "Take the changes? Ain't it something how that white girl do talk jive? What I mean is, the young lady is impressive in her ability to express herself in the appropriate vernacular. Your brother teach you that too? Go on, you're wasting my time. Spitz would be rolling in his grave and he's not even dead." Badfingers leaned toward the fat man. "Nobody can replace Spitz, Dwayne. But she must have some kind of balls just coming here tonight. Let's see what she's got." Casey took a step forward. "I don't need balls, I got this," she said, thrusting her sax towards them. "Tell you what, little white bird," boss man Dwayne said. "I'm going to bring the fellows up here for your number. All you got to do is keep up. I play along with my records all the time." "Hoo-wee, you play along with records? Guess we ought to sign you up right now." "Really? This is live music, dollface, and that's a whole different breed of cat." Four men appeared out of the darkness and climbed the stairs to the stage. The one with the trumpet was handsome, but she didn't like the way he looked at her. Not a leer, more of a stink eye. As they took their places at the instruments, Badfingers introduced them. "Catfish is the aviator, Leon's the screamer, Sid's the hide man, and Thump's got the doghouse. I'm Freddie, the bone man, but I ain't playing tonight. This here's Dwayne. What's your name, Whitebird? Casey Brown. Casey, Dwayne snorted. You ought to be carrying a tennis racket, not a horn. K like in Kansas, C like in city. Catfish tinkled a few measures of 1 o'clock jump with his right hand. Count Basie? Was he being sarcastic or just loosening his fingers? He winked at her, but it didn't seem flirtatious. Let's get this over with, Dwayne said. All you kids ever want to play is bop. Coco it is, boys. Key of B flat minor. You know where B flat is, little orphan Annie? My name is KC. Annoyed, she pressed the octave key and blew him the highest damn B flat in the sax's register and held the note until her lungs gave out. Now the girl squirt. Well, you got the pipes, Dwayne said, but do you have the chops? He'd barely spoken the last word when she launched into the intro to Coco. Her nervousness disappeared as she let the music carry her. Leon hopped in on trumpet without hesitation, playing unison an octave up, matching her note for note. Next, he was supposed to riff alone, but the rest of the band came in instead, skipping the remaining bars of the front, running once through the head and going straight to the bridge. That's where they lost KC. She knew the entire number, but her mind blanked with the unexpected change. That wasn't how the record went. She could see the triumphant twinkle in the musician's eyes as she struggled to remember her part. They were playing so fast, so confidently, that by the time she found her place in one section, they were on to another. After a few failed attempts, she lowered her sax. The band continued without her. Leon's trumpet was a battered old thing that blew notes so pure the angels must weep. Sid and Thumb pulsed rhythm like sweaty love. Taking the changes, Catfish became a four-handed demon. When they finished, Casey gazed helplessly at Dwayne and Freddie. Gotta fly real fast just to stand still with us, Whitebird, Dwayne said. They jumped ahead in the piece, Casey said. I wasn't ready. This is jazz, Casey, Freddie said. You can't not be ready. I can play, she pleaded. Not with us, Dwayne said. She wasn't going to cry. She wasn't. Freddie approached the foot of the stage. He offered her a business card. She glanced at his fingers as he withdrew his hand. It looked like every one of them, except his thumbs, had been crushed or wrenched sideways at the first joint. She wondered if there'd been an accident or he'd been born that way. The card was simple, black ink on white cardstock with little curlicues highlighting the letters and phone number. F.D. Ross, Dwayne Height presents the Blue Notes, swinging the 40s, venues large or small, WA4 3232. Forget your records, he said. He sounded almost kind. That little bit you did, you got something, but it ain't enough to love the music. If it's just going to be a hobby, you might as well put your horn down and go work at the Five and Dime. You gotta bleed it. And just so you know, next time, if there is a next time, we don't do bop. Think Duke, not Dizzy or Yardbird.
Okay, can you hear me? I start with a little disclaimer. This is a book about racism. It does use the detestable N word. I do not say that word. So when I get to it in the passage, I'm just going to say N. So you know. A little closer. How's that? Okay. And this is chapter 2. By the way, every chapter is pulled from either Casey or Freddie's point of view. Freddie woodshedded at the piano on stage. Freddie admired the man's talent, even more his stamina. He seemed immune to fatigue. He'd play until 5 a.m., go to work slaughtering hogs at 6, and be back at Narlands by 7 the next night. That left maybe 3 hours for eating, sleeping, and making little catfishes. He and his wife, Janae, had 5 kids, a couple of them under 4. Freddie mopped the back of his neck with a handkerchief. Damn Iowa summers, damn Iowa weather, period. Only decent time of year were late spring and early fall. He drew in a mouthful of smoke, watching as his misshapen fingers pulled the joint back. 31 years later, they still pained him. He used to be able to play the piano like Fish, better, only the Scott Joplin rag at New Orleans. The colored couples dancing on the dance floor, two-stepping that rhythm, and the whites trying not to hurt themselves. He'd never forget his father Lewis's look of horror when he saw Freddie's newly mangled hands. Daddy, they used a hammer. Catfish was diddling Uday Bowman's 12th Street rag. Hey, Bowman, he said, you're going to sit there sucking weed all night? Get your ass up here and give me some slide or go the hell home. To what, he thought. Man, I hate that song. I'll play something else. Fish started in on Goodman's Whistle Blues. Bone's in my locker upstairs, too lazy to go get it. Once he'd lost the dexterity of his fingers, trombone was the only instrument left to him. Shay walked out on him a week ago, probably staying with her mom and Nellie. The two didn't get on well, though, so she'd come back. She always did. But the house was hollow without her. Even their cat Washington moped. Freddie was in no hurry to leave. He loved New Orleans, the closeness, the dark, the stink. It was like walking back in time. Not that those times were ever that great. They would just happen to be then, and then was always better than now. Almost always. Fish was right. It was late. He crushed the joint on the top of his shoe, stuffed the remainder in his jacket pocket, and stood up. How do you get away with staying out all night? Nothing to get away with. Janae likes to sleep alone. Fish broke into a grin so wide his teeth reflected the sink bulb's glare. Don't mean she gets out of bed when I do come home. Freddie put on his white fedora and pulled the brim down. You sure all them youngsters are yours? I stop by your place twice a week when you're at work. I always thought a couple of them looked kind of odd. I just figured they took after her side. Freddie smiled. Head down. Pick up the tempo, man. Maybe we ain't bird, but whistle blues. Damn. If a colored man felt like fighting, all he had to do was walk into Curtis's Gardens. It was the least seedy of Waterton's roadhouses, but it did not cater to Negroes. Like everyone else, the owner hired black bands to entertain his white customers that just tried getting a drink between sets. Going in any other time was asking for trouble. Freddie had ended up on his face in the gravel parking lot more than once. Shay was gone again, and Freddie was in a foul mood. He slowed down as he approached the garden, thought about stopping, and didn't. 15 years ago, he would have vented his frustrations with a good rumble, but 15 years ago, he wasn't 50. Nowadays, the rest of his bones ached near as bad as his fingers, and his body was so worn down he had to rest up after sleeping. Instead, he drove around with his windows down, hoping the stars and the cooler air would calm him. July nights were steamy, but nothing like the blast furnace of July days. Although he wasn't a cabbie anymore, he still loved driving. It made him feel powerful and free, like he could go anywhere and do anything. The black 44's rounded fenders made it look like an upside-down bathtub. Maybe not the prettiest design, but the car handled well. The heater took up most of the middle of the dash. The speedometer was a narrow slit with numbers in a straight line. Sometimes he had trouble reading them in the day, but they lit up when his headlights were on. Not that he'd ever paid much attention to the speed limit anyway. The odometer showed over 190,000 miles. The Blue Notes usually rode to out-of-town gigs in an old school bus now, but he put up plenty of miles on the tour back when everybody had to find their own way. Even the stars were ugly tonight. The constellations filtered through the miasma pumped out by the West Side factories. Freddie pulled to the curb in front of the diminished Fifth, a dilapidated jazz bar on East 6th in Franklin, not too far from his house in Smoky Row. It was always the same thing. Why don't you make more money? At least the taxi will steady work. Who are you screwing now? I know you're screwing somebody. I hate this town. We're going to be treated like ends. Anyway, might as well take me to Chicago. In view of her former line of work, accusing someone else of screwing around was funny in a sad sort of way. Freddie didn't understand the attraction of Chicago. He doubted she'd ever been there. She was from Spring Valley, Mississippi, a village so small that the sign saying you're entering Spring Valley and the one saying you're leaving it was the same sign. If he was ever going to move to a big city, it would be New Orleans or Kansas City where jazz was hot, or New York where it was burning down the town. Chicago had the scene too, but he just didn't like it there. Same heat as Iowa in the summer, only worse with its thousands of miles of asphalt drawing in the sun and spitting out fire. Same cold in the winter too, and a couple million more maniacs who didn't know how to drive on snow. Truth was, backwards as Waterton was, Freddie liked it here. 45, 50,000 people, enough size to keep them from getting bored, not enough to swallow them whole. The white folks here didn't like blacks any more than they did in Biloxi or Selma, but most were too stupid even to be good racists. Freddie opened his car door. Stench from the diminished fist spilled out onto the sidewalk. Weed and tobacco smoke, vomit and beer. Leon was probably inside drinking. Maybe Sid was with him, even though he never touched booze or drugs. He was a straight arrow who preferred to spend most of his free time with his wife Marley and son Matt. Thump would be scoring horse in the back or over Pamela's Triangle Club, a strip joint better known as Grits and Tips. He peered through the screen door and saw Screech and Ironhead, two semi-permanent members of the Blue Notes. They couldn't always be counted on to rehearse, but they showed up for gigs. That was a problem when there were new charts, but somehow Dwayne made it work. The usual stale music blared from the jukebox because no self-respecting live band would book the place. God only knew why real musicians wasted their nights this hole. Yet here he was. Maybe it was the greasy ambience. His wife had left. Yeah, so at the fifth, he could hear 100 stories that made his life seem blessed. Sometimes he needed to know he wasn't feeding from the bottom of the trough. Ain't coming back, she said, same as always, then whacked a palm upside his ear, and she was out the door. He'd never raised his hand to a woman, but that didn't stop Shay from slapping him when she had a mind to. Never hard, but sometimes he caught a fingernail. No nookie, no cooking, the temper of a rabid coon, and still he missed her. Hell of it was, he couldn't even remember what he'd done this time. He caught the sight of Leon at the bar, smiling and using his looks to impress some woman. Screamers always got the chicks, although Leon was more about the setup than the follow-through. All he wanted was the attention. He was married after all. Freddie intended to drink one beer and leave, but didn't even do that. Reefer relaxed him better and eased his body's pain. He could blow weed at home without enduring that hideous jukebox. Anyway, Washington would be hungry.
Okay, back to Casey's story. Just to let you know, Jack is Casey's boyfriend. The next morning, Jack twiddled his thumbs in the back row where the trombone section sat during the school year. He'd rather be making out in Casey's apartment, especially since she hadn't been in the mood to invite him over last night. Why not play music people like, he said. You know me, I got nothing against Negroes, but who listens to jazz? I do, she said. More than a year after graduation, Casey still used the West High School band room to practice her sax. It was the only place she could go where the noise wouldn't bother anyone. Her apartment walls were too thin, and she wasn't welcome at her parents' home these days. Mr. Pearson thought highly of her from her 3 years as section leader and president of the West Band. Since it was summer and there weren't any other rehearsals, he let her in every Saturday she wasn't working, and most Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday nights for a couple of hours after supper. He encouraged her, keeping his own phonograph here for her to play along with, but had quit trying to coach her technique. What he liked and what she played were different things. Besides, as he admitted early in her junior year, "You surpass me." The school board forbade her to bring anyone with her when she was in the building after hours, but Mr. Pearson didn't object on the few occasions Jack tagged along. He was right next door in the music office working on next fall's marching band drills, just in case Jack got frisky. Casey sat on the piano bench and assembled her sax. Piano was the only instrument she'd ever been formally trained on. She'd taken lessons since she was 4, years spent learning not only notes, but the keys, time signatures, chord progressions, structures, and theory. And everyone told her she had that natural knack that couldn't be taught by anybody. "I'm not saying I don't like your playing," Jack said, "but would a little Eddie Arnold hurt you once in a while?" Casey strapped the sax around her neck and started pounding the piano's keys, exaggerating the country rhythm to every white body's favorite song this summer, Bouquet of Roses. She didn't sing often or particularly well, but she didn't care. When she finished the intro and came to the verse, she warbled in a purposely obnoxious twang. I'm sending you a big bouquet of roses. Jack, oblivious to her sarcasm, perked up. Yeah, like that. You can't be serious, she said. How does that even compare to this? She picked up her sax and blew through Coco the way she intended to the other night at Narland's. She stuck every note. When she was finished, she was exhausted. You gotta bleed it. Jack looked at her with genuine perplexity. Well, it's really fast.
Okay, I'm going to come in the middle of a chapter here. Freddie and Dwayne have been checking out a white band at the city's best venue. The Jay Garber Band, which incidentally was a real band, they had a nice following in the Midwest, played at Electric Park quite a bit. And then Freddie drops Dwayne off at home and he goes to Narland's for some time, to spend some time there. When Freddie arrived, the parking lot was almost empty. A few people were drinking at the bar, but no one was dancing because no band was playing. The owner was a wiry black woman whose father had wanted a boy. Her real name was Rufus, but she went by Ruthie. Her husband, Big Daddy Johnson, had died 3 years back, leaving Narland to her. Freddie found her sitting alone at the table doing the books. Where is everyone? Ironhead didn't show and Screech wouldn't play without him. You look like hell. Feeling my age. A young white couple was sitting near the edge of the dance floor, the boy looking perturbed, the girl sad. Both had beer bottles. They old enough to be in here? Ruthie glanced at them and shrugged. What do I care? I'm losing my ass. Sid takes away my liquor license, so what? Sid's drums and Fish's piano were permanent fixtures on the stage. Whoever was performing on a given night was free to use them. Freddie pointed towards the piano. Mind? Nothing but gravity holding your ass to that chair. Freddie climbed the steps and sat at the old upright. It was bigger than the Baldwin Afrosonic his mother Beatrice had left him, but just as beat up, its wood scraped and dented, its eyes were mostly gone. His hands hovered over the keys. His fingers had been twisted in different directions, making it difficult for him to play anything but chord clusters. His thumbs were undamaged though, and if he bent his wrist at just the right angle, he could sometimes compensate enough to play slow tunes. That eliminated the rapid syncopation of ragtime he loved as a kid. He pressed the keys to approximate Michael rowed the boat ashore. His finger joints screamed at the smallest pressure. He even had a glacial pace. He flubbed several notes. Shay loved this old spiritual, one of the few things that could calm her angry soul. But she was gone and his hands were broken. He decided to sing. His voice lacked Ironhead's alluring gruffness, but he could hold his own. By the way, I am not going to sing. You'll thank me for that. Michael, row your boat ashore. Hallelujah. A few people present groaned. People came to Narland's for jail, not old Negro spirituals. Freddie didn't care. He played and missed notes and sang. Michael, row your boat ashore. Hallelujah. He heard agitated whispers from the white couple below the stage, then footsteps approaching. He kept going, thinking Shay, thinking this ain't 1917, thinking Daddy, they use a hammer. Where you'll hear the sounds of the trumpet sound, hallelujah. Someone touched his shoulder. Mr. Ross? A girl's voice. Freddie glanced up. White girl, brown hair, maybe 5'5", a little too thin. Still had her bottle of beer, not a drop missing from it. He pushed her hand away. The hell? Sorry about your finger, she said. Ain't your business to be sorry, he said. Do I know you? Casey, she said. I was hoping you'd be here tonight. Huh? Whitebird? Her. Claimed she was 22. She'd go to jail if she got caught drinking in here. Her boyfriend too. Or would if he wasn't already storming out of the building. You don't look too happy, Freddie said. That's Jack, she said. He was mad I made him come. He'll get over it. She took a sip of beer and made a face. Put that shit down, Freddie said, before Ruthie calls the cops. Can't get around a Schlitz doesn't make you look grown up. She set the bottle on top of the piano. I don't like it anyway. What do you want? You need an alto sax. That's Dwayne's job. I'm just the bone man. You have a business card for bookings. Don't mean I do the hiring. He said, I've got something. Freddie turned back to the piano keys. You're the one thinks noodling along with records makes you a player. That don't cut it. You got to play live with other musicians. Make us feel what you feel. Trade fours, give and take. If you don't know what we're thinking before we think it, then you ain't fit to be on stage with us. I can do that. You learned that, what, a couple of days? I've been practicing. Jesus Christ. Freddie switched to a different number. Amazing Grace, he sang. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. The girl touched his shoulder again. Teach me. Get your hand off me. You trying to get me lynched? She stepped back and stared at him so hopefully that he dropped his eye. He balled his deformed hands into something like this and pounded the keys. It looked like I can play horn. Hey, Freddie, Ruthie called from the table. Miss Snowflake giving you trouble? She was just leaving. Call Dwayne, the girl pleaded. Give me another chance. Why does a white chick want to jam with a colored lad? Black players are the best. You planning on turning black anytime soon? Freddie stood up and headed toward the stairs. Without asking permission, Casey took his place at the piano. She played her own version of Amazing Grace, a slow, heartbreaking version that made Freddie pause. The notes flowed and weaved, and in their quiet power expanded to fill the entire room. He listened, a little choked up until she finished, remembering how Mama used to play it. This kid did it better, from a place in her soul that other people never reached. Holy shit, girl, where's that coming from? Inside me, piano and sax. Just give me a chance. That broke Freddie's rapturous mood, which annoyed him. He was doing good till you started talking again. What am I supposed to do? Stick to what you know. Playing ivory like that, you could make real money entertaining rich white folks. The Blue Notes is just a down and dirty swing band for down and dirty people. What you want is crazy. Is not. You got a union card? Do I need one? Ain't getting anywhere without it. Otherwise, where do I get one? Easiest way is through Dwayne, and you know how that's going to go. I'm good enough. I know I am. She wouldn't give up. Freddie tried a different tack. He jabbed a bent finger at her. I don't care if the sun shines out your ass, girl. You ever thought what it would mean to play with us? What do you mean, what would it mean? White don't like black, and they don't like anyone who does. You know what else? Black don't like white all that much neither. You playing with us, your own people are going to call you an N-loving whore. My people are going to call you an N-loving whore. So, you an N-loving whore? Stop saying that. You don't like my language, little white bird? Going on the road with us old cats ain't like charm school. We sweat and stink, we drink beer till we're stupid. Thump shoots horse, and we all blow weed, well, except Sid. We piss against the wall, we can make it that far. We fart and then laugh about it like schoolboys. Think N-loving whore is bad? You ought to hear us when we get on about women. We go into detail. See what I'm saying? You talk dirty, so I know all the words. She was still looking at him like this thing was possible. Don't give me that face, he said. Then there's the sleeping. No decent hotel will take us, so we even got to stay in places with no self-respecting roaches and rats, though. Restaurants make us eat in the kitchen. You ready for that? She looked at her feet. I don't care, as long as I can play. Freddie sighed. Dwayne says no, and you want to come back less than a week later and try again. Nobody gets good that fast. The ear ain't enough. 2, maybe, but now, no way. You'll have a new horn man by then. We better. There's other bands. The girl, Whitebird, KC, looked like he'd just cut into her chest and eaten her heart. Like he'd shit on her dream, which he had. I want to play with the Blue Notes, she said. Now you're just being stubborn. Anyway, Bird is Bob. We play swing. Swing is okay. Dwayne's a genius, maybe Sid, but the rest of us ain't all that special. So what is it? Because we're the only ones who put an ad in the paper? Well, that too. His trousers were loose at the waist. He pulled them up, couldn't seem to keep on weight lately. Your boyfriend take off? He's waiting in the lot. I'll walk you out. Freddie led her down the stairs, across the dance floor, and past Ruthie, who glanced up with a raised eyebrow. They paused near the exit. Start with licks from tunes you know. Mess around with them. Memorize a bunch so they're ready when you need them. Learn to play this lick against that line, this note off that. Can't do that with records. How can I learn all that if I don't have a band to practice with? Freddie shrugged. Hell of a thing, ain't it? Start your own. With who? She looked like she was drowning in air. Mr. Ross, I work in a grocery store. Okay, that's our reading for the night. As Jim said, do something a little different before we get to the Q&A. In the book, the band's manager, Dwayne, is gay, and his partner, spoiler alert, dies. And in the book, Dwayne writes a song for his partner called It Ain't Wrong If It's Right. Now, Dwayne is a fictional character, and the song is fictional, or well, Roger and I actually wrote this song, and we thought we'd have some people come up and sing that song for you. So we have got Kimberly Pont. She and I have been friends for 30 years. As I said, she's only 27, so that's weird. She sang at my wedding, sang at Police Memorial for me a long time ago. And she has a range of like, I don't know, 12 octaves or something like that. Lovely woman. And the other guy, if you know Cedar Valley music scene, you know him. Cedar Valley's own icon. Mike Michalicek on piano for you guys. We're going to step aside here and let the pros do their thing.
It ain't wrong you're welcome. You're welcome.
And now you know why I am not a performing musician. Okay, any questions, answers you guys got? Well, no, you have questions. We'll hopefully have answers.
Well, I will also always ask you the first question you get. How is it that you two guys are able to write novels together? So,
Well,
and I will say, when you do get questions, if you can just repeat it, just in case the people on Zoom can't pick it up.
Okay, well, we get this question all the time, and we always say, I write the nouns, Roger writes the verbs. I write the adjectives, he writes the adverbs and the testifiers, and I take them out. No, we do everything by email. We are such goofballs in real life that we just play when we get together. So everything is done by email. We write chapters and send them back and forth. And then I'm the one who puts them together and revises them so they all sound like they're done by one person.
I have to defer to the wordsmith on that portion of it. However, each novel, I think we've done the collaborations slightly differently. There's one book which we're still waiting to get published, called Shun the Heaven, where he assigned me, okay, you write these chapters with these characters, and I'll write these chapters with these characters, and it's a mystery whodunit, and I'm not going to tell you who done it. I'm going, oh, okay, interesting. So I don't know if you want to embellish on that story.
Yeah. One of his characters did it, but I didn't want to tell him that because I didn't want him to slack his writing to give any kind of indication of that. So yeah, that was kind of fun.
That's tricky.
That's what they did to Ingrid Bergman during the making of Casablanca, because they hadn't finished the script, so they told her she could wind up with either guy. And the performances were so good that they just didn't, even when they finished the script, they didn't tell her until the very end. So it works.
Yeah. But Shorty,
Do you guys have a background in music? How does that?
Roger and his entire family are just the most amazing musicians on the planet. Well, except maybe for our two cats. I have not had any training, but oddly enough, I do most of the music writing. He's an arranger mostly, doesn't do a lot of original stuff, and I just write the stuff like crazy.
I guess I confess I'm playing more than I have time to sit down and write. So it's nice that he can do that part.
And I am retired.
And I'll retire someday. But I play bass trombone in the Iowa brass band. I don't know if you're familiar with them, and CR Jazz. So I get a nice eclectic background in bass trombonisms, and enjoy doing that. Fortunately, with COVID starting to go away a little bit, we are starting to resume rehearsals after a couple of really long years. So we're excited to get back into the concert scene again, and I'm just looking forward to that. So.
And like I said, I'm not a performing musician. I have done weddings and stuff, but I can get myself run out of town really quick if I try to play in front of a crowd.
Strangely, I was a music major and you were the English major, but a lot of times I would try to write something, prose or poetry or whatever, and he would write music. So we had this collaboration that way.
Yeah, the very first song we did, he wrote the words for, and I wrote the music, even though he's the music guy and I'm the words guy. So it just kind of works back and forth. So
Many other books I hadn't kind of taken on jazz as a kind of topic. What was it that kind of, how did you wind up with this as a issue in the book?
Like jazz?
Yeah.
Jazz in particular?
Yeah.
But it kind of came at it sideways a little bit. We wanted to go back to Hammond Falls, and we really liked the time period. And we were curious about a little written era for the Midwest, and that was the mid-40s after the war. There wasn't a lot of writing that we saw dealing with the repercussions of the war. What happened to the people back home a couple of years later? Nuremberg trials were going on. What were the latest headlines and that kind of thing? So we kind of chose 1948 just as kind of the sweet spot between World War II and the Korean War. And then the jazz part, my wife had an uncle who was a doghouse player, a bass player in a band here in Waterloo during that time. And I had some pictures of him, and I started thinking about what was the music scene like back in Waterloo at that time. And since I was playing in a jazz band, I was hearing all the dialogue, how you talk about the music and trading fours and doing some of these kind of things. And I really wanted to use that vocabulary somehow. So kind of put that into the mix as well.
And as the interview, in Hammond Falls, there's a character whose name is Lewis Ross, and we really like to be, he's kind of a secondary character in that book. We wanted to see what happened before the Hammond Falls and after. We started writing and found out that the story was more about his son than it was about him. So that's why Freddie got born. And then we just tried to think of scenarios. Well, how can we do a lot of cool stuff? And I thought, well, what would have more dynamics than a 19-year-old white girl who wants to play with a bunch of middle-aged black guys? You got the gender, you got the race, economic differences, you had all kinds of things going on. It just made a lot of really neat dynamics for us to play with.
Any other questions?
Are the Zoom people having questions?
Let me see nothing. I see nothing on the chat, but you're free to chat up a question too.
Come on, you guys, I know you're out there.
Hate all those Zoomers in Iowa City. I think some friends of mine tuned in from Oracle, Arizona. So if you're around.
All right, well, thank you both very much then.
We should keep
All right.
Yeah.
All right, appreciate it.